I was speaking to a legend of the black freedom struggle of the 1960s on the phone last week. No names, although I tell this story with their permission. This individual was very upset about the rumors, amplified by the White House as if divine truth, that the NFL would be changing their rules to force players to stand at attention, hand on their hearts, during the national anthem. And just so folks know that as of this broadcast, that is not the case, and Roger Goodell has stated that the rules will not be changing. So this person could not stand the thought of these athletes being humbled by a sport that potentially takes away so much from them, their health, their minds, and now seems also to be on the hunt for their dignity. This person implored me to speak to any NFL players that I might know and say to them, if you accept the stripping of your rights like this, it will set the black community back a century. End quote. Look, this is not a message I'll be passing on, and not only because of how comically ridiculous it would sound coming out of my mouth. Like, you don't want to hear me saying, you're going to set the black community back a century. That would be kind of silly. But while I am deeply sympathetic to what this person, and all of us, have invested in this rebellion of NFL players, I would argue that it is a misread of how much power these athletes actually have, and also where change comes from, to think that everything is riding on their shoulders. If people think that NFL players are going to lead a new civil rights movement, or even be the substitute for the building of such a movement, then we are setting ourselves up for a profound level of disappointment. First, there is the social reality of the players themselves. Their work situation is almost a caricature of precarious labor. It's not just that the typical career lasts only 3 seasons, or the fact that they don't have guaranteed contracts, or can be cut at any time, or even blackballed like Colin Kaepernick if they dare stand for something other than the selling of their sport. It's that they play a uniquely violent game, where any play can be their last. That some of these players face all of these obstacles and are still pushing forward in the face of a bullying president and the death threats issued by his minions is living proof of their courage. It is inspiring at a time when inspiration is in short supply. That we are following this story so desperately is also a testament to how thirsty so many of us are for heroes in this era of orange tyranny. But to think that NFL players will lead a resistance in a vacuum is a recipe for regret. If anything, it is evidence, as if more was needed, of the terrible way that we are mistaught history in this country, from grade school to the History Channel. We are fed this idea that change happens because of the actions of great men, and occasionally women, each one a modern-day Moses, leading an acquiescent mass to a promised land. This reading of the past conditions us to be passive in the face of injustice, constantly waiting for a superhero savior. This is, if anything, even truer in the film and book documentations of great athletes who stood at the intersection of sports and politics. The tendency of sports histories is to decontextualize athletes and create icons out of human beings. It's an approach that's left us with a skewed view where people like Muhammad Ali, Bill Russell, Tommy Smith, and John Carlos weren't a product of the 1960s as much as a creator of them. We would be wise to remember the words of Dr. Harry Edwards, who was at the heart of those struggles, and then wrote, quote, "It was inevitable that this revolt of the black athlete should develop. With struggles being waged by black people in the areas of education, housing, employment, and many others, it was only a matter of time before Afro-American athletes shed their fantasies and delusions and asserted their manhood and faced the facts of their existence. The roots spring from the same seed that produced the sit-ins, the freedom rides, and the rebellions in Watts, Detroit, and Newark." End quote. Similarly, Billie Jean King in Title IX legislation never sees the light of day without the women's liberation movement. Yes, Billie Jean King shaped that movement, but the movement itself, as she herself says, was a precondition to her emergence. Today, these NFL players are not fighting because they are poring over statistics that show police shootings are up in 2017, or because they woke up one day and decided that silence was not an option. They exist because of the Black Lives Matter movement. They exist because of the horrors broadly felt when video of police shooting the unarmed, like Terrence Crutcher and Walter Scott, or the legally armed, like Philando Castile, hit social media. The heroic actions of NFL players raise awareness about an issue that the current president refuses to discuss. But while amplifying the movement is critical, It's not a substitute for a movement in and of itself. The most far-reaching grassroots response to these players has been the sight of young athletes taking a knee, from cheerleaders to soccer players, from high school football players willing to get kicked off their team to German soccer stars. It's remarkable to see, but it's also not enough. If players are going to keep up the fight, it will only be because we are doing the hard work of building anti-racist movements in the streets. This is one instance where watching pro athletes absolutely cannot afford to be a spectator sport.